If you're like me, you find yourself often playing Star Fox and thinking,
this game's cool and all, but where's all the magenta?
A little less than a decade ago, a small studio by the name of Antab released Grid, a mobile shoot-'em-up game where you blast simple low-polygon wireframes, dodge obstacles, and upgrade your beam in a similar manner to R-Type or Gradius. The game isn't available anymore. It was only available on Windows phones, and though I did have a Windows phone back in the day, the only games I played on it were Minecraft, because I'm the living definition of a basic bitch. Antab wasn't finished though, with the team releasing Grid 2 in 2012, bumping the game into the third dimension, turning it into a blend of both visually and mechanically a mix of Star Fox and, say, Tempest. The reviews for this game were a bit mixed, though most of the negative reviews reduced down to technical errors rather than reflecting the gameplay of the game itself. But Antab wouldn't hit their breakout success until they released Grid RetroEnhanced, a reboot of the series done by an incredibly small team of about 3 people, sporting a cyberpunk 80s aesthetic and a soundtrack composed by Australian artist Dreamfiend. I'll be including a link to their work in the pinned comment below. It's some great stuff. And man, I'm a sucker for this sort of aesthetic. I love the 80s retro synthwave aesthetic. It's the sort of aesthetic I wanted my channel to take for a while before I realized a lot of people have this sort of aesthetic. And then I discovered the checkered flannel that you see associated with my channel today. The game is every cyberpunk enthusiast's wet dream. Lots of cyans and magentas, tons of technobabble, and a UI that just oozes personality. You play as Hacker Man, hacking into the system visualized by a 3-dimensional shooter. What system? Who cares? Mr. Polygon Man is trying to stop you. I don't care what I'm trying to hack into. The second that Andros intervenes with my actions, you know I'm gonna start tapping buttons. Or, I guess just a single button. I am playing this on the Switch, and most of the face buttons do shoot, but that's really all you're gonna be doing, moving and shooting, so feel free to press whatever button you prefer. You have no control over your Z-axis, but you do move throughout the X and Y-axis, as objects of various colors fly at you via the Z-axis. Right from the start, the game does a great job at conditioning you on how the game works, throwing these big yellow panels at you to tell you that, hey, yellow is for shooting, pink is pain, and these metallic black surfaces will reflect your shots back at you. Which this was the #1 cause of death in my many runs. That and the really just awkward camera. I'm pretty sure that this thing is random, sometimes bringing you over to the side of the screen despite how much you really just don't want to be over there. You're really at the mercy of the track, and without a proper way to indicate what part of the track you're above, I'd often find myself getting really disoriented and confused as to the depth presented here, leading to what felt like plenty of unfair deaths. I'm honestly not sure if you're able to manipulate the camera. It felt different every time I played, though the track assembling itself in the background is a really nice touch and really nice to look at, though you won't be seeing it when you encounter one of these many ports. These are what I assume to be shortcuts. They lead to a small minigame, which is really just shoot the digits and then collect the numbers by flying through them until you crack the code. Pulling it off felt really satisfying, but I didn't really notice any difference in the game if it failed. So I'm not entirely sure what this is here for, aside from just the spectacle, but I mean, it does that well at least. Shortly after, you do encounter the first boss, and it's relatively simple, and it's built up to several times. You can see it flying around the stage in earlier parts of the run. He's covered with these reflective panels, but you can see for a split second that in the very front of them are these yellow spots, so you gotta find a way to turn them around, and you do so by shooting off all of the weak spots on his head. Then it's a matter of just trying to shoot all of the weak points, and it's a bit awkward because of the auto-aim system that this game has, but it's still doable. You just gotta be a little bit patient. After you blast off every part of this little serpent boss, I'm not really sure what exactly it's trying to be, Mr. Polygon Man returns to go, "This is mine now," and attaches it right onto his face and just does some classic face laser action. Is this stupid? Yeah. Nonsensical? Most definitely. Is it cool? Abso-fucking-lutely. On my run where I beat arcade mode, I was able to shred this boss down without even giving him a chance to face laser me, cause somehow I managed to keep my triple shot through most of the boss fight. Every once in a while a power-up will fly through the course. It could be extra health, an upgrade to your blaster, or shields. However, if you have shields already built up, getting smacked around too much will still downgrade your weapons, so the shields kinda feel a little bit irrelevant, really just extra health. And when you get your beam downgraded, the game makes sure that you know it. Okay, I'm honestly not sure if the announcer is supposed to sound distorted like that. I've had this game for about a year now. I bought this game with the eShop card I won from Johnny's panel at last year's Too Many Games, but I'm just now noticing this sort of distorted voice for the announcer. I can't describe it. It just feels weird. It feels like one of those distorted memes you find on social media. There's one part of the game that I just could not get the hang of, and that's these flipping metallic blocks. You have this segment earlier in the run where it's just a wall of these guys and you can shoot them freely, but then you later encounter a hard variant where they flip between reflective and vulnerable, which isn't bad. I actually really like this. You get this really easy version that sort of teaches you how it's going to be later, and then you slowly feed in that more difficult obstacle. That's great. But because of the really finicky auto-aim system, I found it really tricky to target a specific block that I wanted to shoot, and found myself repeatedly blasting myself or just getting run over by the wall. There's nothing more frustrating than a game seemingly not doing what it's intended to do. But this is the only part of the game that feels like this, aside from some pink pillars that shoot up out of the ground that felt surprisingly difficult to avoid in one part, only because of how difficult they are to see. But you won't run into that until you hit the second half of the run. A long one-on-one fight with Mr. Polygon Face, a gauntlet of old and new challenges that really test your memory and patience, with returning mini-bosses and a couple new ones. This guy that shoots the little beams out of the ground was kinda neat. I wish I saw him earlier in the run. This encounter was scarier than it should have been because of how far into the run I was. You don't see this thing earlier, so I was really tense during this encounter, but it wasn't too bad. There's 3 phases to this first form, but it's not really a direct fight. It's more an obstacle course that throws some easy obstacles at you, but then changes them with reflective variants that make it a bit more difficult. And then on the third phase, it just throws everything right at you. But at the very end, you'll encounter the sliding laser gates of doom. Shoot it down and it'll deflect Polygon Man's face beams right back at him.
Yeah, how's that feel, you piece of
3 reflected face lasers later, and Mr. Polygon Man's face shatters, revealing the juicy center. Reconstructing his face and using it as a weapon before turning his brain into a psychopathic disco ball. This part of the fight wasn't too difficult, but damn did it feel satisfying laying the smackdown on this guy. Kinda like in Super Metroid when you finally get the hyper beam, like you're not really supposed to die here, but damn does it make you feel good with the game constantly supplying you with upgrades throughout the fight just to really build up that sort of beautiful power trip. Landing the final hit, Polygon Man finally explodes, the music going silent and the backdrop fading to black. And finally,
system access allowed.
You make it into the system, and god damn, that was a trip. Honestly, a great arcade experience by such a small team too. The people over at Anteb deserve some crazy praise for this, going from Windows Phone Gradius clones to this gorgeous spectacle of a game. It's quite the accomplishment. The game's fairly cheap, and if you like Star Fox-esque gameplay with a synthwave sort of aesthetic to it, then I highly recommend this game to you. It's difficult, but it's learnable. Again, it took me about a year to beat this game. It's not perfect. I found that the audio glitched on me several times in my first playthroughs while recording footage for this video. The music really just sounded like a scratched record, and oh, that is not good. The Switch version also has a unique Power Glove mode.
It's so bad.
Where you hold a single Joy-Con in your hand, moving it around using the gyroscope, and you shoot by tapping the shoulder button with your thumb. That's pretty cool. I'm not very good at it, but it's a fun distraction, kinda like Endless Mode, if that's your cup of tea. I didn't really bother with this mode too much, but again, I like the option. And for about $12 on Steam, I'd say that it's well worth the money. Even cheaper if it's on sale. I've seen it go down to like $3.
And God knows I'm cheap.
Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe to stick around to see what we've got in store for the future. This video is much shorter than the content I usually make on this channel, but I kinda want to keep making smaller videos on this, give some smaller games some highlights, you know? My videos don't qualify for monetization yet because of the new requirements, so if you'd like to help support the channel, consider checking out my Patreon and join this wall of beautiful people that show their names at the end of each video. Or join the special Plaid Dad tier and get your name read out at the end of the video. People like Chef Kilo, EMT Neutrino, Mark Travis, Slim Jim's Media Bin, The SideQuest Gamer, and Virginia H. Thank you guys so much for your support. You guys are the reason I'm able to put videos out as fast as I can. And if you'd like to see me put out videos faster, consider supporting me on Patreon. But that's gotta do it for today, and I really hope you guys have a wonderful night, and I will see you guys soon.